Hola, mis amores. Welcome to another episode of Tea Time with Nori. In 2017, my husband was really struggling with me. And what I mean by that is that he was having a tough time communicating with me, communicating around the things that mattered to him and to our marriage in a way that I could understand. Around that time, I was going through functional depression, transitional depression, and I was struggling with being able to see beyond my immediate pain, being able to see what were the things that were joyful about my life, and what patterns and behaviors I could change to manifest the life I wanted to live. And JP was going through it. He didn't know how to talk to me about it. He didn't know how to understand what I was going through. And I didn't have the language to articulate to him what I was experiencing in the way that he could help me. Sometimes when you're going through depression, you don't know how other people can help. You don't know how to ask for help. And he picked up this book, the book I'm going to share with you today. And when he picked up this book, he started learning about me and learning about what I was kind of experiencing. And he opened to a perspective he hadn't considered. And it resulted in what he calls 1,000% improvement in our marriage. So I'm super excited to share with you The Four Tendencies by Gretchen Rubin. And this is a book that the title says The Four Tendencies, the indispensable personality profiles that reveal how to make your life better and other people's life better too, by Gretchen Rubin. Now, this book, when it comes to personality profiles, I've taken pretty much a lot of them. I won't say all of them because I don't know all of them, but I have taken a number of them. And out of the personality profiles that I have gotten, the quizzes or assessments I have taken, this is one of the ones that I come back to very, very regularly. The Four Tendencies is a framework that was put together by Gretchen Rubin. You can check out the book to get the story. But essentially, this framework boils down to why we do and we don't do things, why we act and don't act. And I love that the framework focuses just on one part of our development because a lot of frameworks tend to cover everything and try to encompass everything about us. And I like the fact that the four tendencies really limits itself to why we take action and why we don't take action. And essentially, there are four tendencies that we can fall into. The book argues that we have them all, but there are some that are more prevalent than others. And I'm going to share them with you today. So, the first tendency is the upholder tendency. The second one is the questioner. Third is the obliger. And fourth is the rebel. Now, the way these tendencies work is actually pretty simple. It helps you see how you meet or don't meet external expectations. So it looks at, are you the person that if you wanted to go eat at a restaurant will go by herself? Or are you the person that will need somebody to hold you accountable to go to that restaurant even though you want to go there? Are you the type of person that when you're taught to do something, you really stick to it and you uphold it as much as you can? Or are you the type of person that rebels against that? Are you the type of person that can get herself to do the things she wants to do? Or are you the type of person that has struggled with that doesn't that has a tough time doing the things they want to do? So that's essentially how this framework works. So very quickly, the upholder tendency, they meet outer expectations and they meet inner expectations. These are the people that the teacher, for example, can tell them, hey, study for the test, and they will study for the test. But if they're like, I want to study for the test, they can also make themselves study for the test. Their tagline or a way to think about them is discipline is my freedom. Then you have the questioners, and as the word implies, they question everything. Their moniker is I'll comply if you convince me why. So the questioners, they can get themselves to do the things they want to do. But if somebody wants them to do something, then they have to understand why that's important. So keeping with the student example, if the teacher tells them, hey, you need to study for the test, they need to know, well, why do I need to study for the test? And if it makes sense for them, then they will do it. If they like, I want to study for the test, they can make themselves do that too. Then you have the obliger. And in my work, I find a lot of people, a lot of women that I work with tend to fall in the obliger kind of realm and the questioner realm too. So the obligers, They meet outer expectations. So if the teacher is like, hey, you need to study for the test, they would. But if they're like, I need to study for the test for myself, they'll struggle with that. So they struggle with inner expectations. And the last one is the rebel tendency. And the rebel tendency, they resist both inner and outer expectations. So if for the rebel tendency, their moniker is you can't make me and neither can I. So if you want a rebel to do something, you're going to have a really hard time getting them to do it if they do not want to do it. And the same thing for themselves. It's like if they don't want to do something, they can't make themselves do it either. So it's a very interesting way of thinking of how we do things and how we don't do things, why we do things and why we don't do things. Let me know if this made any sense for you in the comments below. I will show you this here, which is a quick diagram of how they all work together so you can see it. Awesome. And there's a quiz. So you can take the quiz and find out what is your tendency, what is the tendency that you predominantly hang out at, and be able to use that information for changes in your life, which brings me to the next point. This book, after he entered our relationship, JP learned that the tendency that I tend to fall into is the rebel tendency, and the tendency that he likes to hang out at is the questioner tendency. So him being a questioner and me being a rebel really explained a lot of the things that we were struggling with in our relationship. He likes to ask a million of questions. I'm like, why are you asking me questions? He likes to really do a lot of the research before he does anything. I'm more of a go with the flow and let's see where it takes us type of person. So the challenges we were having in our marriage were a manifestation of how we were communicating with each other, but it wasn't coming through because our styles of communication were different and the drivers for taking action were different. So it really opened up some questions for us in our relationship on how we can do things better. And that's why I really enjoyed this book. Once the book, the way it's broken down, there's a chapter for every single tendency. Well, there's a section for every single tendency. And each tendency covers two things: how to understand the tendency and then how to deal with the tendency. And at the end, there's a section on how to apply the four tendencies so that you can have a more productive, insightful, and general relationship with other people. Personally, I actually use this with my clients. Like I have them all take the quiz so we can know how to communicate with one another and they can learn things about themselves, which is the main reason why I love this book and how it has really helped me. It has opened me up to understand different perspectives from people without making assumptions about them. And the four tendencies has a way of really sharing with you why rebels do a certain thing versus another, and then how you can learn these things that can be seen as downfalls or weaknesses and use the awareness of these behaviors so that you can turn them into strengths so that you can get the things that you want out of them. So a quick example, being a predominant rebel, which if you looked at my life, you will know that's basically is me in a T. But being part of the rebel tendency, I've learned that if I don't want to do something, it's gonna be really hard for me to do it. So I really manage my discomfort around the things that I don't want to do because I already know that it's gonna be difficult for me to do those things. So I like to start my day with the thing that makes me most uncomfortable because I already anticipate that I'm gonna struggle with this stuff just out of the nature of my personality, right? So by doing that, I'm able to take something I've learned about my tendency and turn it into a strength by working with it, right? Making it my ally. In my relationship with JP, before I offer any options to him, I take time to do the appropriate research. I get my questions that I know he's gonna ask answered so that I can expedite the process. And he has completely improved the quality of our relationship. He says it's been 1,000% improvement since we got into this book. So I wanted to share with you today. Check out The Four Tendencies by Gretchen Rubin. And this is one of those self-help book type of things that I think is really worth reading. And I think it's worth revisiting too, because sometimes we don't see patterns about ourselves until someone points it out. And I think the four tendencies does a really great job at helping you become aware of things about your personality, patterns that you've been engaging in, habits that you may have that are not taking you in the direction of your dream life that you can actually do something about. So, thank you for joining me for today's book review. I hope you have an amazing rest of your day, and I'll talk to you soon. Hasta luego.